Hi, I'm Deanna Ishikawa, and today I will be teaching you about Job 16. But before we jump in, we're going to ask our other member, Tio Renee, to give us a few pieces of information that he remembers from the previous chapters in Job that we've covered.
Well, to the best of my recollection, I mean, we go back from chapter 1 to now. We start when God and Satan they have a meeting someplace in heaven, and Satan bring to his attention Job because to test Job. God allows Satan to touch first his family, and his family are killed. Then he loses all his belonging. Then finally, God allow Satan to get Job sick, but not to kill him. So in this chapter, we still on this chapter we are 15, 14, now 16. Job is still sick, and we see that his three friends, I don't remember their name, that instead of uplifting him, they begin to judge him because they think, because he's sick, because he's a sinner. That reflect that most of us human beings, that when someone is down, instead of trying to uplift that human being, we push that person down. So that reflect in our personality. And then we saw in chapter 15 how one of his friends was still criticizing him, and Job had a conversation with him. And now we're gonna go into chapter 16. That's to the best of my recollection from my mind. That's what I
That
remember.
was a lot of the story. So thank you for that. Deacon Abel, would you like to share anything else to fill into or add to what Tio Renee said?
Okay, well, he did a very good analysis up to this point, and it's interesting that up to this point we go through a process where is different layers, I would say, of Job that are being, let's say, attacked, different dimensions. When you see that, like Brother Rene said, we have the family, right? Okay,
Yes.
we have his belongings, right? We have his health, right? His wife and his friends. So Job, up to this point, has gone through a number of attacks that come through all different layers of him that make me think, which is one of the, I believe, one of the main principles of this book. How will we handle it? How will we handle it at that point? I know that throughout your studies up to this point, you have said, oh, okay, imagine how you will feel, or especially when it was like talking about his children. I remember that you had mentioned what it will be like you cannot fathom it. And others also in the audience felt that way. The interesting thing is that not everybody, not all of us have, let's say, the strong sense of, oh, okay, whether we put our kids first or our spouse first, or we value our lives first, because not everybody has children or are married, but then we have friends, we have our health that we take pride over. These men, up to this point, by chapter 15, has gone through every dimension possible, financially, physically, mentally, spiritually, okay,
Emotionally.
in emotionally, in every aspect. And he's always asked to, in one way or another, to sort of curse God. And even if he goes into a questioning mindset, which I know that has happened up to this point now, he still always remains steadfast in his beliefs. So that's something that I just wanted to share, because I believe that Rene's point after this chapter, the first 15 chapters, summarizes it very well. But I think that is something that we have to make sure we keep in mind, what it will be like to have been attacked in all areas of your life.
And still be faithful. Yes, Tio Renee.
Yes, we can see the only one that was spared, at least the sickness was his wife. his wife, but she's in pain. She lost her children. Her husband is sick. That's why her faith is shaken. But
Yeah,
I mean,
but you gotta understand that the attack to Job through his wife come
exactly.
at the point that her faith is tested. And in a moment, I know how much Diana loves these children, Ryu and Kenji.
Yeah,
God forbid, I cannot even fathom it. It's so hard that I cannot even fathom it. I know what she would do to me. Actually, you know what? I don't even want to go down that aisle, right? What she would say if she feels that I remotely have some responsibility over what happens to our children. So when she actually tells him to curse his God and die, you know, that's the ultimate attack that Job receives from his wife. You know what I mean? The devil through his wife.
yeah. But
To
I mean,
him.
I guess that's the reason why the devil spared her. But but I don't think Satan did not ask God, "Can I kill his wife?" He said, can I mean, in a sense, his children." But it's amazing that you see through her. And after that, you know, at the end of the chapter, we have him there. We see that then Job has many kids, and in my mind, just was this with the same wife? You know, but that poor lady is going through hell too. You know, she lost. I mean, I love my kids to death, and but that's a very interesting part of that chapter. She will never, at least, was touched physically, but she was touched by through all the pain and suffering.
Very emotionally. And I wanted to do this activity because I think the best lesson to learn for a teacher is how much information are the students retaining. And in this situation, you two are the students. And I would say that I'm sure you knew the story of Job before, but I appreciate the ability to have these conversations and to continue to increase my knowledge and help others increase theirs. So thank you both for giving your summaries. And I love that you're very passionate about it when you talk and are able to debate the topic as well. So yes, as we mentioned from Tio Renee, in chapter 15, Eliphaz was speaking. This was the second time he was speaking to Job, and he was getting I would say stronger in his reproach with Job and trying to still talk to him about what he was doing wrong and how he should repent. When we move into chapter 16, Job is talking during this chapter again, and it is very similar to some of the other chapters where it's going back and forth, where Job is asking, kind of begging, when will these windy speeches that you're giving me cease? Right? He wants support from his friends, and what he feels like he is getting is just them antagonizing or giving him a difficult time and telling him to repent. That's what they think is the right move, but that is definitely not what Job is looking for in comfort and support here. So what Job wants from these friends is for them to bring him relief, but then he also goes back to say, hey, if I did this to you and I gave you all of these speeches that were very long-winded and so forth, that because you've seen me suffer like this, it would actually encourage you and bring you relief. So I'm not going to do that, even though that's what you're doing to me. Then it goes through a section in the book as well where Job is kind of saying God is against him, right?
Mhm.
It's going through this whole set of verses where he's quite angry because he feels like God is against him, although he still, of course, respects God and doesn't kind of understand like what is going on because he knows he hasn't created a lot of sin outside of what would, I guess, be considered normal from that perspective. Then at the end, Job requests again for a mediator, which you saw much earlier in the books. And Job says, if I die, I don't want it to be for naught. I want to be remembered. I want my blood to kind of stay behind. So he's basically saying like he feels like death is near, right? Because of all of these pains and feelings that he's having. However, he doesn't want it to be not remembered. He doesn't want to just disappear into the abyss and never be remembered. So that's his plea at the end of the book for God. I think it's also important to remember that no matter what happens, God always knows what is and isn't true. Job reiterates that throughout the chapter, and that we need, as friends, to be a kind comforter, which we've seen in many of the chapters. So that's what I have. Tia Renee, you look like you maybe have a question or some
Yeah,
thoughts.
well, but you allow. But what I wanted to say that the truth is absolute, and God, if you knows the truth, and God knows the truth, people will judge you. I mean, through my personal problem, that you will know what saved me was my faith, and that Jesus, God, put in my heart that the truth is absolute. It's like I hear a voice. If you know the truth, and I know the truth, doesn't matter what anyone think. You're okay, Renee. So that really saved me from being embarrassed, from walking straight up, looking at God, because He put that in my mind that the truth is absolute, and at the end, Jobs, in a sense, let us see that. But what I wanted to say, by you letting me do this summary, I was able to analyze everything quickly, and I was able to put him in the place of that woman that we don't like that she was criticizing Job and this curse your God and die, but that woman, I could never see it before. She went through so much pain and suffering. She lost her children, all her beautiful children, and then the husband is sick. They lost all the property. By you letting me do this analysis, that I was able to like quickly in my brain analyze everything, and I was able to see every victim in this test that God allowed to happen. God allowed this test to happen, and and I was able to see Job's wife from a different perspective, because I was able to empathize with her. I was able to feel a little bit her pain, because I thought about my kids. I thought about my children. So I said, but how will you feel if your children die, and God give permission for that test to your wife to go through a test? I mean, I'm not married, but let's say if I had a wife with divorce, but through that test, how will you feel? Will you be? I mean, in my case, because I have a strong faith, maybe I will not. But any one of us could easily be weak in this such enormous amount of pain and suffering.
Yes, and I mean, we can see that when a lot of marriages have a loss of a child or something, the divorce rate is significantly higher, right? And that's because of these inner emotional
It's like
dilemmas where they're trying to battle that and trying to work together and go through that emotional part. So it's very challenging.
indeed.
To your point, less than a third of them actually survive when there is some form of heavy loss like that. Let me just tell you, in this chapter, what's interesting to me that speaks out is that his faith is tested, right? His
Yeah.
faith is tested, and he's preparing. He's already in the acceptance stages of grief. He's in the acceptance stages of grief, and he's preparing for what's next, right? Okay, I don't want to at least be forgotten. That is a very, very big testament of acceptance, right?
Yeah.
So if we analyze this from the stages of grief, that this man has truly suffered all forms of loss, and oftentimes almost all at once, perhaps. It's interesting that he arrives to the stage of grief. Not to say that he's not in the pain stages, in the stage of grief, where he is actually like, oh man, he's questioning, okay, why is this? Even though his faith is being tested. This reminds me, takes me back to one of the preachings that we've done in here in the church, that God will test, but he will not tempt, right? And what Rene was saying, that the devil didn't take his wife, I dare to say that it probably was worse to actually have her in the position that she was. Because I got to tell you, at this point, right? At this point, we have his wife is still in the picture, but in the most counterproductive way. So I
Mhm.
can only imagine you going through the stages of grief and arriving at the position of acceptance and still have the one partner, the one thing that is next to you doing the most counterproductive, let's say, thing to do. In my opinion, if I look back, I dare to say that maybe his wife in a moment of grief of her own was tempted by the devil, and he probably grabbed a hold of her, while
Mhm.
Job was tempted by the devil and has not wavered against his faith, right? Even in the face of losing his life, which by the way, he's already there at that stage at this point, he still his faith is still steadfast and strong. I believe that is interesting. While the test of God for his faith is still ongoing, he is not. It's important that we understand that the devil is the one tempting him, and God is providing the test. But May, you were gonna say something?
No, but you see, I mean, today I empathize a lot with his wife, because when you go into that pain and suffering, is you don't know how you.
Unimaginable, unimaginable.
Yeah, unimaginable. That's because Job is a Superman of faith. I call him, because God already knew who was going to fail and who was going to be successful, because God is omniscient. Therefore, He picked a man like Job to allow all these things to happen, so that us might have faith, that say, yes, I have the proof that people went through all the pain and suffering, and this man kept called Job. He never denied me, and he remained faithful. That's it. That's what I have to say. But I really loved it today, because I was able to super analyze the chapter, and it got to me emotionally. I was able to give credit to everyone that deserves credit in the chapter.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or discussion points anyone wants to cover?
Yeah, baby.
All right, thank you.